here you go. It's all yours. Thank you so much for being here, Helen. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, everyone. So glad to be back here and be in the company of truth. It's always a special time together. So very, very grateful also to be here. There's, as always, a subject that's come up many times this week that I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about because it's a huge part of our awakening, and it's quite problematic for a lot of people. And it is really the subject of devotion to truth. And usually when I speak with people, there's a common thing around devotion that comes up over and over again. So I just wanted to bring it forward and hopefully clear it up. I don't think I've ever met a single being who has said to me that they feel that their devotion to truth is adequate and or enough. Everyone I speak to has come to this same recognition that or feeling inside that their devotion is lacking. Devotion not to any teacher or even any teaching, but to the truth itself. So I just wanted to talk about this just for 5 minutes. I see your hand up there, Daniel. I'll come to you really, really soon. The important thing to understand about devotion that took me a very long time to understand myself, and hopefully we can shortcut that, is to recognize that the desire to increase your devotion to truth is devotion itself. So a love of love, we could say, is just love, or a desire to be more devoted is in itself already a deeper devotion developing. What really feels lacking for most of us our devotion. I certainly felt that way my whole pathway, that my focus, my commitment, my time spent practicing everything wasn't good enough according to my mind. But something became clear after a little while, which I wanted to share here. Hopefully it will help relieve some suffering. And that is that if we are even pondering, worried about, contemplating whether our devotion to truth is strong enough, then it already is. If we were sure of our own devotion being already enough, then that's when we would be vulnerable to kind of arrogance or something like that. If the fact that we're even concerned with if we are devoted enough to truth is our insurance policy that we already are. And of course, it's going to increase. It's going to get stronger as you continue. Get stronger for me every day still. But I just wanted to bring that forward because it has been a huge struggle in my own life. I always felt like it wasn't enough. And finally, it just became clear that if I was even slightly worried that it might not be enough, I was paying attention to it. I was on it. I was not just drifting, wondering, thinking I'm doing the right thing and what I'm doing is enough. So hopefully that helps to just kind of help you relax. Would you even be concerned about whether your devotion is enough to push you all the way into a deep and profound, stable awakening? If you were wandering away from the path, no, you'd be happily watching Netflix or something now, right? Instead of being here with all this wonderful family. Your devotion has brought you to this session and to many other ways of studying the truth. So I just wanted to say that because it's come up so many times, and every time this subject comes up, people are always looking at it from a negative place, that their devotion to truth is inadequate. That's a strong feeling. But can I ask you just to look at that and say, if you're even thinking about it at all, that means that you are heading in the right direction. Someone who's not even questioning, absolutely certain that they are already devoted enough. Firstly, I've never heard anyone say that. Usually it's the other way. And if we were sure of that, we're very open and vulnerable then to drifting away from the path. So, Daniel, sorry, did you want to say something, to ask something or share something? I'll invite anyone else that wants to share as well or ask a question. Feel free to raise your hand or just speak up. We'll see what comes up. Okay, Michelle.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, how are you doing?
Thanks. I'm good. Can I ask about anything?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just I think I talked to you a while back. I ended up having weight loss surgery, so I've been out of work for a few weeks. I guess I just recommitted to my practice, and I noticed that like I do have more peace, but where I feel like I'm still struggling, and I probably know the answer, but the money's really bad, and I'm not. It's bad even when like my dad actually gave me some. Like I still was actually negative. Like it all works itself out. But I guess what I'm saying is like it's amazing to me how I can be drawing like actual gift, and still be like it's still there's something in my energy that's like really blocking it. Anyway, I guess I'm just stuck on this like idea that I just can't let go of the story, I guess. Like when I sit in the silence, I feel this like power and this stableness and peace. And even when I question if the separate self is there, I feel that I can't find it, that there's peace. But then when I try to live Michelle's life or show up with anybody in my life that's living these more interesting stories, in my opinion, I get sad. Like I can't do my life. Like I literally just not like in a not like I don't that sounds really dark, but I kind of like that. Like, man, I just wish I didn't have to be here, but not like I would do it. But anyway, I just thought I would ask for any insight you might have because I always feel like I feel lost no matter what I'm doing.
What's the biggest stress in right now, the biggest area that's not working? Is it the finances or is it like a whole lot of areas?
It's probably more than just it's like I think it's my emotional regulation mixed with the finances, I would say, because I am just so overwhelmingly emotional and disorganized. And so like my adult life, it's like I'm 43, but you would think I'm 20 with the way I operate my life. And I guess it's like most of my friends are in their 40s and they have savings and they're helping their kids and they're just like they got power in their lives, and I'm just over here like that seems better. And I get jealous, and I'm also alone so most of the time, which is not a big deal. I'm pretty good at being alone. But yeah, and the money just seems to be very crystal clear that I'm doing something. So, obviously there's something, a belief or energy, because I couldn't believe that my dad handed me like a gift and I came back and put it into the mix and thought, oh my goodness, it's like there's still this glaringly obvious, like lack, even with that blessing. So it's like a mixed, I don't know, if that made any
So
sense.
it was same for me, that when money started to actually come in, I actually got in a worse financial position because somehow I just couldn't keep a hold of it. It was just slipping through my fingers. And for a short while, it actually got in a worse situation. This is after I'd seen clearly over and over again who I really was and seen through the idea that there was a separate someone. And it was quite a dark time, actually, because there was this seeming inability to move beyond this. And finally, and I'm just going to throw out what the issue was for me, because it might be helpful for you or for anyone. Finally, I realized I was scared of not having enough money, which I had transcended by that point, but I was actually scared of money. I know that sounds like a crazy thing, but I knew there was something in my energy kind of stopping it from coming in. And right from my very first memories, this message is subtly, accidentally, of course, not on purpose from my parents, but come that money is a bad thing in and of itself, that it's almost dangerous to have. It's going to cause more problems than it will solve, cause arguments and, things like that. When I really looked at it, there was this sense of it's just easier to not have it. So even when it comes in, I was somehow, you know, something would break on the car or in the house and it had to go out again just as quick or quicker than it was coming in. I don't know if any of this sounds familiar.
Yeah,
But
it does. It makes me uncomfortable to have it and to not have it. So it's kind of a not. I relate to what you're saying.
impossible situation then, is it? Because you can't let it in, but you also want it to come in. So it's a very low frequency in the body then, because you've got this push-pull. I want it, but I'm trying to keep it away. And of course, none of this is conscious, but it's going on these opposing frequencies. So for me, it helped to ask myself, how would I feel if I had more than enough and it was a stable thing? How would I feel if I had more than enough money that I didn't have to worry about it, at least? And the first things that came up when I asked myself that question were free. I would feel excited. I would feel relaxed. I would feel peaceful. But as I kept asking that question, there were some quite surprising answers. I would feel stressed, and it wasn't a word that came in my head, the answer, but it was a real tension in the body, like I'm going to do something wrong with it or bad with it. I'm going to screw it up if I have more than enough. So I couldn't let it in because I was scared of what I might do. You know, the remnants of a separate being was scared of what it might do with that money. If I didn't have any, then I couldn't screw it up. So I had to really dig deep into this and investigate it. So I don't know if it's any use to you, but I just felt called to share it.
No, thank you. Because I noticed that I'll say this one last thing. I noticed that I I repel it for sure. I get like even when my dad gave me the gift, I felt uncomfortable because I'm like, well, now what do I do with it? Even though all you gotta do is pull out a calculator and look at your bills. I mean, you know what to do with it, but I can tell there's a discomfort. But it's interesting because I put everything on money. It's actually like I have decided that the people in my life that don't need, you know, God or to awaken or anything deeper, not that bad things don't happen to them, but it's because they have money, in my opinion. And I know that's ridiculous because plenty of rich people, you know, have been very depressed. But I guess what I mean by that is just, you know, they move, they get a house, they get a dog, they just have complete authority in their life to make decisions. And I feel like a child. But I agree. There needs to be some questioning. But thanks for that.
But just checking out what the answers to that question would be, you know, taking some time and just how would I feel if it started coming in regularly in a stable amount? If I'd basically resolve this, and you might find some feelings come up that aren't so positive, and then just checking that out, like, is that actually true? Now that the infinite self is the one with this flow, and you've seen yourself to not actually be someone who's unworthy. It's just this old remnant of a separate self, isn't it? That's just popping up to be resolved now.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And our whole self-worth is kind of based on our ability to provide for our family sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
And those around us. So with 4 kids, I totally get it.
I know, and my daughter's a teenager now, so I feel like our whole relationship is about what can I give her? Like, you know, can you lend me money? Can you buy this? And it's weird how limited you can feel. But I'll continue with my practice and add those questions in. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for sharing so openly.
Thanks.
Okay. Melissa?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Hi, thank you, Helen, and thank you, Michelle, for that question. I am, my question actually has a lot to do with that. We're in a position where the quick story is we
bought a cabin out in the woods that was a mess, and we're still trying to redo it, but it was to keep my brother-in-law from getting evicted. He had 6 months behind in rent. And the cabin was a mess. And so the funds that we bought the cabin for were enough to get him kind of a new start. He wasn't able to quit drinking, which I understand now. It's just at this point, he's 67, it's medicinal. His body is giving out. But now, like, we've been trying to help him ever since as well. And so now, like, social services is the burden's on us because Zillow placed the cabin at one price, and there's no way, you know. And then we had to prove what the assessor, and we sent that in, and now the inspection, and we sent that in, and there's a lot about money going on with this. And no matter what happens, everyone's like, we want to help, but nobody can. And the system won't help because he's in between financial positions. And so now there's like a burden that it's on us to, you know, try to prove. But regardless, money's not doing anything for the situation, helping or nothing, or harming at this point. It's just like, I don't know, it's a burden. Is that kind of the same? I'm just lost. And I can tell, like, the last couple of weeks, no matter, I've even tried to step back and give this back to, you know, my husband, it's his brother, and but I can't. We were supposed to go to town, and we can't do anything because now he can't even stand up. So he's been in the hospital. They're going to release him again, and he can't function, period. And we can't find the help. So I feel that I can't focus on anything else. It's, I mean, I should, but I can't.
So is this something that's going to be long-term? You're sort of looking at long-term having to be there by the sounds of it, right?
Yeah, that's the hard part, because I still have a son, you know, over in Western Washington. He's getting ready to graduate college, right? Like, we all have these other lives. My dad is approaching the end of his life in Michigan, right? And then our grandkids, and it's just, yeah. What is my focus now? Just what is truly most helpful now? Is that the best thing I can do? And just when all this comes up, it just comes up, and let it be there.
Yeah, but that's easier said than done, isn't it? You want things for your own life, which you feel, I mean, correct me if I'm saying something that isn't so, but you want things for your own life, you and your husband, that you don't feel you can have right now as well. So,
Oh yeah,
allowing whatever negative emotions come up about this is perhaps a first step. But also, I would suggest getting actually in touch with what you want about this. So there's obviously things you want in this particular situation. You would like some certain things, and maybe just actually writing them down, looking at desires for you, for your husband, for your family, your children, all of that. When you write down your desires, you probably notice some negative emotions come up with those. So that would indicate some feeling that you can't get that. But right now, it seems impossible, perhaps even to have what you want. So if you can then recognize that you're not separate to any of the other beings in this. So your brother-in-law, your husband, your children. If you can see your own formlessness, and that these beings aren't separate to you, you're going to start to feel a lot better. Most of this, the reason we're suffering in a situation like this is because we feel powerless to make a change or to do anything to help the situation. Do you get that sense sometimes, feeling stuck and powerless?
Yeah.
So go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm there. Yeah, it's
So let me
like
ask you, let me ask you something strange, but nonetheless, hopefully helpful. If you are not a separate being and you want these desires, so let's say for your brother-in-law, you want to have more help and support from authorities, from family, from wherever, so that you have more time for yourself. That feels very impossible as a separate being, doesn't it? But as the infinite being wanting this, how does it feel then?
natural.
And there's an inevitability about that desire then, isn't it? It's got to somehow come into being. Yeah. So looking at these desires and recognizing if you feel bad when you think about them, it's because they're still being held from the perspective of a separate someone, a person who is limited by finances, resources, time, everything, right? Energy. You've only got so much energy, so much time if you're just one body and mind. But if you can hold these desires from the place of truth, then you have infinite resources and actually a capacity to allow the highest thing that wants to manifest here in this situation for all of you. Something wants to happen here that is going to be beneficial to everyone involved. And that's perhaps your role in this, is to want what you want, to not deny that, but to want it as the infinite being, the one being, the truth, the divine self. Can you get a feel of it inside?
Absolutely. And that's to love the whole situation as it is. And that just alone takes away the layer of burden. It just loving the whole situation.
Yeah. But also to get in touch with what you want. What do you actually want? Do you want more time to yourself? Do you want more time to spend with your family, more resources? Recognizing that we don't often allow our own desires because we feel selfish in that situation. To want what I want would be at the expense of someone else. But as the infinite being, these desires are arising. So what you want must be, to get that, it must also help everyone else in the situation. Sometimes we have to be brave enough to feel our own desires, to want what we want. So the spiritual thing, yeah, to love the situation, to accept everything as it is, but also to get deeply back in touch with what you want. You feel terrible usually because we're using so much of our energy to suppress our desires in this kind of situation because they feel impossible. What if your role is to actually want what you want? If this situation were resolved, what would you do with your time? Where would you go? I'm not asking you to tell me right now, but just to start to think about that again. Knowing who you really are and the resources that you have.
Yeah, it would feel a lot less. It already feels a lot less burden.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And perhaps the infinite being is using that body and mind called Melissa to change the whole situation for everyone, because you just happen to be the most awakened body around that can actually want whatever you want and allow it to come into being. Perhaps everyone else in that situation is thinking it's impossible for this to change or whatever, right? So getting back in touch with what you want, and you want it for a reason. It's not a selfish thing. It's a selfless thing, actually, in the end.
Yeah.
So, hope that
Thank
helps.
you so much, Helen.
Thank
It helps
you
so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being so open as well. Okay. Would anyone else like to share something or ask a question? Just feel free to speak up or raise your hand, whatever. Seema, is it? I hope I'm saying that correctly. There we go.
It's Sema, like Emma.
That's Emma.
It's an unusual spelling. I sent the question, so if you come across the written one, just ignore it. In the last few years, there is an experience of beauty, or with music, with the flowers, with children, with little dogs.
Mm-hmm.
But recently, it feels like my heart is so joyful. The emotion is so strong that I feel that I can't take it. And then that experience that's so beautiful becomes something that I'm a little bit of like an anxiety or fear. And then lately, it's like I'm seeing the beauty, but I don't want to go there because something is not sure about that feeling of what is it going. I can't explain what's happening. That's why I wanted to ask you.
Yeah. It's very normal and common for this to come up at this point. You know, you've had some kind of recognition or seeing, and that opens up the whole perspective of phenomena. The world just looks very different, doesn't it? It looks very beautiful, and knowing what everything is made of, the divine self, the awareness, the consciousness appearing as forms. You're seeing the essence of everything. Your eyes still see the phenomenal world like everyone else, in your ears, but there's a recognition in the heart of what it truly is, and that opens up to a lot of joy, a lot of beauty, bliss even, and you know, deep peace, all of that. And at first it comes in ways like you've mentioned. So sometimes I'd be listening to beautiful music, or just sitting with the cat, you know, watching the cat be cute. And when the kids were, you know, doing certain things, it was just, or babies, nature, all of that. And then eventually it was pretty continuous. So even what perhaps the world would call mundane things, when you look at them, there's this radiant beauty to everything. And the first thing that happened when that started to occur for me was very similar to what you said. If I had £1 for every time I thought I was going to actually die, because there was just so much, I'm not exaggerating, so much love and beauty, that I thought something was going to burst. I literally thought my heart was going to burst. There was like an intense pressure and a surging of energy. And really what it came down to in the end, if I had £1 for every time I thought I was going to go and never did, I'd have at least £100 in a jar somewhere. So what this is the natural state of a human being when they're not believing any thoughts. And it's not a state, it's a continuous thing, but there isn't a word, at least in the English language, for a continuous state. So I'm going to use the word state. The natural state is peace, joy. Total absence of fear appears as joy, and a total absence of believing any thoughts. Everything looks beautiful. But for most of us, that begins to happen before we have seen through all the remnants of a separate self. So when this joy and this love begins to surge in us, it feels very, very strong, because we're used to very low frequencies like guilt, shame, fear, those kind of things, anger. And these are very high frequencies, the opposite end of the spectrum, the scale. And they come with such force or power that what remains of our egoic sense of self freaks out, and it feels overwhelmed by it. It feels that it won't be able to handle, I won't be able to handle it, it says. It's too much. And it begins to push against it. And that's when the experience turns from being something very beautiful to being something, as you described, not, you know, quite an ugly thing to experience. Because we're pushing against, if you imagine this beauty and this energy, this joy of being a very fast flowing river, very fast. We're so used to just a trickle of water. Suddenly this fast flowing energy comes. We're trying to stand against it and stop it with our hands. And of course, it's going to feel terrible. It stops the whole energy in the body mind, and it feels awful. So I had to surrender this. I had to really investigate, is there anyone to be overwhelmed by it or destroyed by it even, or whatever word was coming up. And every single time I asked this, the flow actually, the belief in a separate self was let go of again. And even a subtle sense of someone who has to manage the flow of energy. We can even keep a separate self alive just by doing that. And the overwhelm or the sense that it's too much, it's not true for the body. I can guarantee you that the body can handle 1,000 times more energy than you got in it right now, life force. And the infinite self absolutely can handle it. It's just this I thought, this separate self thought that's in the way still. So really questioning for me, is there, and looking to see if there's anyone that could be overwhelmed by it or even destroyed. And it turned out to be just a thought. But it had been a thought that had come into play every time a strong emotion even had come in. I was going to be overwhelmed by fear, and it was the same thing going on here with even bliss. And it sounds like a really good problem to have. I've got too much bliss going on, but if you are resisting anything, especially these high frequencies, it's going to get pretty painful pretty quick. So can you see there's just a little separate self hanging on there, trying to manage this?
Yes.
So looking with me right now, can you find anyone that could be overwhelmed? Can you find a separate person that has to manage how this energetic awakening unfolds? If there's no separate being, then there's no one to be overwhelmed. There's just the body and the energy, and they're just appearances inside the self that you are, the great self, the vastness. Does that feel different when you look at it like that?
Yes. At the time when it's happening, I try to say I am not the joy, and I'm not the anxiety that comes after the joy. And it seems that things become a bit more stable.
Mm-hmm. How about if you flip that over? I am also the joy, and I am also the fear, and I am also the energy. These are all ways that I am showing up.
Okay.
Yeah, see how that feels. And when it happens, when it begins to come, the urge will be to run away from it. I'm going to ask you to run into it, into that beauty.
Okay.
The moment you stop resisting it, the energy will just flow. Right now, for me, there's very quick, very fast, very strong energy flowing, far more than I could have ever handled as a separate being. But I don't notice it because there's nothing in the way of that flow. It's just flowing smoothly. We only feel it when there's some slower energy, like a big rock in the middle of this fast flowing river. So when you move towards it, when you embrace it inside, there's no resistance there at all. Then it's the opposite of what mind wants to do. Mind wants to try to stop it when it's building this love, this peace, whatever, this beauty. So moving towards it is the thing that the self, the infinite love, would do.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Takes a little courage first time, but you've got it. You've got this.
Yes, I got so far.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to ask anything, share something? Lynn, yeah.
Helen, I'm feeling it too. That rushing of the life force, the love. And I realize that there has been a lot of fear about time. and with your help recently, we've been discussing how time really doesn't exist.
Mhm.
And I've been feeling this love just flowing more and more. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. There really is no time. There's nothing to be afraid of. Would you do that?
Could you give me a little more, what specifically about time or the energy flow?
Well, my fear was that I was running out of time, that I had to hurry. Just about everything I would do, cooking or writing something or picking up the grandkids at the bus stop or whatever. It was always a
right?
fear.
Awakening, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now, I can, if I feel it coming up, I go within and I realize that's just a thought.
Yeah.
It's not true. And I've been feeling the energy flowing more and more. And I just would love it if you would talk a little more about, is that clear?
Yeah. Time really seems to be, as a separate being, a separate person, we really feel the effect of time, right? We feel constantly time pressured, or the opposite, where we're bored, there's too much time, trying to find something to do, trying to kill time. We have some strange sayings around it, don't we? Time, but usually the common experience of time that we have as separate beings, seemingly separate beings, is that we are not in control of it, that it's affecting us, that it's doing something that we don't want it to. Either it's going too fast or too slow. And especially here in the realm of awakening, we feel like we might run out of time before we leave the body to complete our awakening. And for me, it became clear at a certain point just how much of my entire existence was run by this sense of time, and how much energy that was costing, because it started to get liberated, like you were saying, this energy flowing after really seeing through it. And for me, to transcend the sense of time, to recognize my own timelessness, I had to really come to see that I wasn't a someone. I and recognize myself to be that I am, or that existence, that universal existence, that formless consciousness, whatever we want to call it. And in that, as that, there is no capacity to experience time at all, right? That sense of time just cannot survive in the recognition of who we are. It's all, you've always been here, and you are everywhere all at once. There can be no time for you then. And even then, the mind and the body still going about their day-to-day things, the sense of time seems to, it's just a sense of time then. It's not a concrete thing that we can be the effect of. Whenever we think we're a separate being, there'll be something other than us, even something subtle like time, that can affect us. And that's the basic experience of all human beings, isn't there? There's other things outside of me that I have no control over. And time it's a big one. We really believe in it. We really buy into it. But you can't run out of time, because you're not affected by it, right? Can you see that?
Yes. Yes. It's just a thought. It's just, it's the separate self feels that it's other than who I am, but there is no other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the sense of time depends on the belief in objects that have actually, phenomena and forms that have actually arisen out of the self, separate to the infinite consciousness presence. If there are really no objects independent of the self consciousness, then there could be no time, because without objectivity, there's no the perception of objects. There's no distance, no difference, no experiencing, no events, no happenings. All of that falls away. And it's what we can prove to be true in our inquiry, right? But then it's just allowing it to pervade into our day-to-day experience. It becomes very, very clear just how much energy it's cost us to believe that we are at the effect of time rather than the source of it. The sense of time arises out of you. With that, a lot of energy is liberated, a lot.
Absolutely.
It's just to see that
Tension
you
leaves
can't
the body
be...
too.
Say again, sorry.
Tension even leaves the body. The body's been holding this.
Really, the sense of time and fear for me were one and the same thing. There's always a fear of running out of something, and time was money, as we've discussed earlier in this hour, but also time, that was the biggie. The sense of being a being moving through time and space towards some future goal, which was at that point awakening. You know, it costs a lot of energy to believe I'm at the effect of something. I'm not in control of something.
And I'm lacking something.
Yeah. And you can't really feel that you're lacking something without some tension or even fear there, can you? It's just, they go hand in hand. The body begins to relax when you see this. And the body can get so much more done then in the same amount of clock time, and much more efficiently, and very little energy expended doing it.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we have a few minutes. Unless there are any more questions. Should we just sit in some silence? That would be nice. Let's just start by, let's just take a few deep breaths just to ease us into this. And your eyes open or closed, whatever you want to do, just making sure you're nice and comfy. Let's just take a few deep breaths. And if your attention has wandered to some thoughts, let's just recenter ourselves here, right now. And attention will wander, just bringing it back to this moment. No big deal. Nothing going wrong. Noticing how the silence, this moment, consciousness, awareness, beingness, whatever you want to call it, how it's presenting itself to you right now. Is there a deep sense of stillness? Or perhaps there's just a sense of being here. Or a deep and profound silence. Whichever way your real self is showing itself to you, just embracing that. I'm just here. I am. Let's just take a few minutes to just be. Whenever you're ready, just bringing yourself back. Open your eyes. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight, or whatever time it is for you. Thank you, thank you. Hand it back to you, Shauna. Thank you for having me again. It's been so wonderful.